common sense leadership. We want to go back to Donald Trump.
For 24 hours to President Harris. 24 hours to make a difference.
I want to thank all of the outstanding artists and performers who are here tonight.
Look at the rallies that Joe Rogan just endorsed me. Is that
We are not going back. We're not going back. America is ready for a fresh start.
We will restore America's promise that we will take back the nation that we love.
Together we will fight, 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 and we will win, win, win.
All right, welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to Fox and Friends. It's a day we've been waiting for, actually for years. It's Election Day, and it is Tuesday, November 5th, 2024. An in-person day of election voting is now underway in a number of states here in the East.
Well, and we already, believe it or not, have our first results. That small little town in New Hampshire called Dixville,
Is it decisive, Ainsley?
It is. Well, actually, it's not. It's a tie, 3-3. It's a tie after the town's 6 voters, which a few years ago there were 8 voters that were there. Now there's 6 people voted in the ballot.
I don't know if they moved or did something else. We'll follow that story. But all eyes on the battleground stage with polls opening in just 30 minutes in North Carolina, 7 a.m. Eastern time for Pennsylvania, Georgia, and parts of Michigan. And at 8, Arizona and Wisconsin joined the mix,
So former President Donald Trump wrapping up his final day on the trail last night in Michigan, surrounded on stage by his family. His campaign picking up a major 11th-hour endorsement from the great Joe Rogan.
Meanwhile, Vice President Harris spending the day in Pennsylvania surrounded by Hollywood A-listers, Oprah, Lady Gaga, and whatnot.
We have live team coverage in 3 key swing states. Pete Hegseth is at the Coop. That's in Waukesha, Wisconsin.
He flew it.
Rachel Campos Duffy is at Superior, because she is. That's a restaurant in Emmaus, Pennsylvania. Then we have Steve. This is Steve Reed.
I've hate on this before, Ainsley. Ladies and gentlemen, Will King kicks us off. He's in Concord, North Carolina.
They feel like it's a competition, Steve. They feel like it's a competition with Rachel and Pete here in Concord, North Carolina, the sweet spot. Good morning to you. Polls open, as you mentioned a moment ago, in 30 minutes. This is a state that Donald Trump won in 2016 and 2020, albeit by relatively small margins, 1 to 2 points, and that's what the polls are looking like right now. Trump up roughly 2.5 points in North Carolina. Dave here and I were talking. I said, Dave, how do you feel about it? And you gave me this, Dave. You lifted your shoulders, did this with your hands, and said, I don't know.
A little nervous. I'm not going to lie, a little nervous.
You told me you've cast your ballot. You've already voted. Tell me what you think is best for America, but what you also feel from your friends, your neighbors, your town.
I have a few friends. We're pretty split. I have a lot of friends that are both on each side, and I'm just a little worried because they're a little delusional. But the good friends are the true Trumpsters.
Well, Andrew, interesting. Andrew is 22 years old, but he works in General Assembly here in North Carolina. So he was sharing some fascinating information. Kamala Harris has pulled her ads from North Carolina. Is that right?
Yeah, we saw something that some of her money has come out, something's been going to Virginia, and it's just very interesting to see that in a battleground state the day before the election or a week before the election that she's pulling money out of a race like this, you're still involved. So very interesting to see what's happening, but we're feeling pretty good about our chances here in North Carolina.
And I asked Andrew, where did that money go? And there's some suspicion that went to Virginia, which would be defense for Kamala Harris. But we'll be checking in all morning long, telling you how it's going as the day progresses here in North Carolina. Back to you guys in New York.
All right. Thank you very much, Rob. And by the way, we're here in New York. The polls open in New York, New Jersey, and Connecticut at 6 a.m. and up and down in certain portions of the eastern seaboard.
I'm getting pictures from Long Island. The line's already wrapped around these schools.
Oh.
And at 6 a.m.?
Yeah.
Pete Hegseth, by the way.
He's at the Coop in Waukesha, Wisconsin, where polls are open at 8 a.m. And Pete, to Brian's point, my sister's a school teacher. They're out of school today because they need the schools down in South Carolina for voting.
Same thing here. Apparently, they last night announced that the Milwaukee schools are closed today as well. That's what I heard. It's on. I'll tell you, Waukesha, Wisconsin. Are we going to beat Concord, North Carolina today? It's not even close. All right, make sure you tell Will Kane that. You know what I love about today, guys? I mean, we did this in 2016. We did it in 2020. The great thing about today is the polls don't matter. The pundits don't matter. Politician statements don't matter anymore. It is we, the people. The people's voice is heard on Election Day in America, and Wisconsin matters as much as anywhere else. And polls open up at 8 a.m. Eastern Time, 7 o'clock local. I want to ask everybody here, who here has voted early? Raise your hand if you voted early. So you got a lot of early votes, and raise your hand if you're going to vote on Election Day today. All right. If we can, let me talk to this table right here. Real quick, you voted early. Is that something you usually do, sir?
Actually, we do. We've done it for a few years now, and it's very convenient, and we like to do it.
Sir, you're voting on Election Day. Why are you sticking around for Election Day?
Why am I sticking around? I'm voting for Trump.
No, I mean, why you like to vote on Election Day?
No, we actually have a place in northern Wisconsin. We just came back from Hayward, which is near Rachel and place up there, and but anyways, I support Trump. I'm voting for individuals that have that's it, brains, that's for sure, but somebody with high IQ, yeah, and that's what I want. I'm voting for high IQ, and I really support the Vance and Trump ticket.
Thank you very much, sir. And Eric Humpty, who we're going to talk to later in the program. So stick around. We're talking to voters all morning, guys.
All right.
You want the high IQ? You have Yale Law School and Wharton Business on that ticket.
All right, let's go to Pennsylvania now. Rachel Campos-Guppy is live in the Superior Diner in Pennsylvania, where the polls are going to open at 7 o'clock Eastern Time. Rachel?
Hey guys, listen, I thought I would be jealous because, you know, Pete's with my peeps in Wisconsin. He actually talked to somebody from Hayward, where Sean's from. But boy, the love in here is huge. People are so excited. We're in Emmaus Superior Restaurant. And as you know, Pennsylvania is so important. The candidates have visited this state more than any other state. 16 times for Kamala, 15 times for Donald Trump. This table here, they're like the kind of guys that turn in their homework early. They all voted already. When did you vote?
October 7th.
Really early.
Mail-in vote, yes.
What was your top issue?
The open border covers everything. Economy, the crime is open border.
Your top issue?
Oh yeah, it's open border too. That like covers it all. Yep.
Same for you guys?
Yeah, pretty much the open borders and the economy, and that pretty much covers it.
All right. Well, we're going to introduce you a little later. George Washington came by, so we're going to make sure you guys get to meet him. See what his top issues are. Liberty, freedom, I don't know.
Yeah, go interview him. He can't.
Humans been waiting to interview him for.
Yeah, that's
that'd be great.
George, who could convene a militia. That's instantly. Well, he's a great guest because he cannot tell a lie. That's true, too.
Yeah.
Oh, wait, is that he and Lincoln couldn't tell a lie? Could Lincoln tell a lie?
It was Lincoln.
I cannot tell you that was George Washington.
He chopped down the cherry tree and lied about it.
Right.
No.
Didn't he
said
throw
I
something
did
across the
not.
Potomac?
I chopped down the cherry tree. I cannot tell you why, but I cannot tell a lie. There was a song we learned.
Right, yeah, I'm not much of a singer, but I would say that it's great to have somebody there who's both in the military and is in politics. So
there you go.
Very good, very good.
All right, meanwhile, our next guest has been covering the campaign trail in Pennsylvania from day one and says the White House will all come down to a few crucial counties, those on your screen right now.
All right, Pittsburgh-based columnist Sarita Zito was at Trump's rally last night. She joins us now to break it all down. Selena, first off, some big news. Roberto Clemente Jr. said, "I'm in for for President Trump." Why does that matter?
Well, Roberto Clemente is a hero, remains a hero, even though he passed in 1972 in this city. He was a legend. He was a proud son of Puerto Rico. He not only was beloved in Pittsburgh, but all across the country. And to see his son there, who's very involved in Pittsburgh, very involved in the community. Just did a big event last month for his, what would have been his father's 90th birthday. So to see him there as a contrast to everything that was said about, Hispanic voters are now not going to vote for Trump because of what a insult comedian said in Madison Square Garden, sort of contradicts the narrative that has been pushed out there by some media and along with the Democrats.
Yeah, he's Puerto Rican. So much, I guess he's one who was not offended by
the comedian.
Right. So, Selena, we always trust you because you have the pulse of the people down there in Pennsylvania. Van Jones was on CNN the other day, and this is what he had to say last night.
We are behind in Pennsylvania, folks. We are behind. We're not where we're supposed to be in the early vote, and that means get up and go vote. Stand in long lines, do what you have to do. When she says she's the underdog, she is the underdog.
What are you saying?
He's not wrong. The Democrats do not have the robust mail-in ballot turnout that they expect. Or they expected. Republicans, in particular in rural areas, are turning out robustly in the mail-in ballots. And a lot of those mail-in ballots in rural areas are Democrat. But these are heirloom or legacy Democrats who have been Democrats all their lives. However, that has changed because the coalitions have changed. You saw the example last night in Pittsburgh at Trump's rally, and seeing a very diverse coalition, a ton of young people, men and women, but also the audience was very diverse. And I think that is what they're looking at. And Democrats have a problem with their turnout on same on election day in Philadelphia. They have had that problem since 2004. Right. Now, maybe they remedy it, but it is, I'm sure that's exactly what Jones is looking at.
So,
go ahead, Steve.
Well, I was just going to ask you about those 5 counties that we put up in a graphic when I was speaking a moment ago. Philadelphia, Allegheny, Northampton, Erie, and Luzerne. Tell us, just generally, what makes those the counties to watch in Pennsylvania?
So Allegheny and Philadelphia are the largest counties. They have the highest population. They are going to go Democrat, the majority Democrat. However, the question is, by how much? She needs to hit about 700,000 in Philadelphia. If that's not happening, she's probably not going to win Pennsylvania. Why? Because of the other counties that you pointed out to, like Erie, Luzerne, Northampton, but also counties like Cambria County, which is in the middle, sort of southwestern Pennsylvania, where Johnstown, Pennsylvania is, and that has gone from a majority Democrat county to Republican. And these counties, those margins, that enthusiasm among Republicans and Democrats for Trump will make the difference on election. Oh, this is election night.
Yeah. Tonight. So I know I talked to you over the weekend. You said you haven't really made a decision on how Pennsylvania is going to go. After the rally, you look at everything you looked at. What does your gut tell you? What do you think is going to happen there?
This election feels very much like 2016 and 2020, but I also believe that favors Trump. I wrote a piece for the Examiner over the weekend that said I'd rather be him than her going into tonight. He just has advantages in our state, in particular among the working class. 10 years ago, we wouldn't have seen 90% of the people that were at that rally last night in Allegheny County. It was a lot of working class people that used to be a hallmark of the Democratic Party. However, they have shed those voters as they become more far left. So I would put the advantage to Trump going into tonight.
So Selena, we know that the early voting is very important, and women make up more voters than men do, but I'm reading that not as many women have voted early. Are you seeing the same thing in Pennsylvania? And if so, how will that affect the election there?
Well, see, I'm of the mind that there isn't a gender gap as much as there is a marriage gap. So I'm looking at women to see if married women, I believe, based just again, it's anecdotal reporting, but if you do it enough and you do it in the places that matter, it starts to show a pattern. And I think the bigger gap may be between single women and married women, and or women with children and women without children. And the women with children sort of favor Trump going into this, and so I'm not quite sure that just because more women have shown up doesn't mean that they're all for Harris. You know, all counties are created differently. They're not equal. And counties around Allegheny County, Westmoreland, Washington, where there's a suburban female vote, they're not necessarily for Harris, especially even in suburban Allegheny County.
All right, let's see what happens. Selena Zito joining us from her kitchen. I see a big mixing bowl in the background. It looks like you're gonna be baking up some
grandchildren.
Yeah. All right.
You're the best. You're the best. You know that state so well. Thank you so much for coming on.
Thanks,
Some
Selena.
of the best coverage with Donald Trump, too. Remember, she was there the day of the shooting. And then he said, I'm still giving you the interview after I've been shot. The other thing to bring up, I thought Megyn Kelly was fantastic last night. I don't know who called her at the last minute and said, come on down. But if you're talking about the female vote, who could come up there and deliver, we carried it live. I thought she was right on the money, and I felt like, in a way, she was outlining some of the bullet points that Donald
Her
Trump
case was different than some of the other speakers. I mean, you would think that she would go straight for the economy, but she breaks down the border and makes it personal. It's about the victim, and then talks about men in women's sports and how that and the families was involved in around that. I think, and then she ends it about saying, men, we need our men, and the demonization of us to stop doing that.
Well, we'll talk about Joe Rogan coming up in the show, but when I was watching, I couldn't sleep in the middle of the night last night, and I turned it on. He's still on stage at like 1:30 in the morning, and he was thanking Joe Rogan, and he said, you know, I was supposed to go to this rally, and I'm sorry for people at that rally. They had to wait 2 extra hours, which I was on with Joe Rogan, the podcast, and he said he wanted me to stay, and he wanted me to. He said, I'm sorry, but this is the #1 podcast in the country. I had to stay.
And he ends up getting the endorsement. This is a guy that was endorsing Bernie Sanders.
Right.
The struggle of change.
All right. Meanwhile, today, speaking of him, former President Donald Trump is going to host an election night party at the Palm Beach Convention Center, just a couple of miles from Mar-a-Lago.
All right. Well, Vice President Harris will host a watch party at her alma mater at Howard University in Washington, D.C.
Madeline Rivera is live in our nation's capital with the latest. Hey, Maddie.
Good morning. So after wrapping up his final rally around 2 a.m. Eastern time, former President Trump is casting his ballot today in West Palm Beach. For his campaign, he will also spend time with family, friends, and staff, and also do some phone-based tele-rallies. Vice President Kamala Harris, meantime, is expected to do radio interviews in battleground states. Harris has already cast her ballot by mail. Here's what to expect as we wait for the results. 43 states can begin processing absentee and mail-in ballots before Election Day. This typically involves verifying the voter's information and eligibility, and then opening the envelope so it can be tabulated by a voting machine. Washington, D.C. and 7 states, including Pennsylvania and Wisconsin, don't begin these steps until today, so just keep that in mind. Now, as for the count, 14 states and D.C. do not allow counting until the polls close. 23 states allow counting to begin before the polls close. However, different states have different laws. In North Carolina, for instance, in-person early votes can't be counted before the polls close, but mail absentee ballots received before Election Day can be tabulated. In Georgia, election officials can begin working on early in-person votes when the polls open, but they can't tabulate them until the polls close. And then finally, 12 states allow both processing and counting to begin before Election Day. This is the case in Nevada and Arizona. Officials from Maricopa County, Arizona's most populous county, expect to report 55% of the total vote and 70 to 75% of early ballots by the time polls close today. Lauren, Steve, Ainsley, and Brian.
Indeed. Hey, Maddie, I was talking to our White House team yesterday, and they said that a number of D.C. businesses have boarded up the windows, and they put security fences around the White House and the Vice President's house and some other places just in case, right?
Yes, I've heard that as well. We also know that barricades and metal fencing have been placed around Howard University, where, of course, Vice President Kamala Harris will be for her watch party tonight. So you see the city just taking security and precautions before tonight, guys.
Good. All right. Thank you very much.
Thank you, of course.
Yeah, hopefully we need it. People just be patient.
And just because things might take long, it doesn't mean anything's going wrong.
Yeah. And
Every state's different.
our election night coverage will begin with Brett and Martha tonight at 6 p.m.
Indeed. Meanwhile, at 6 a.m., 6:20 actually, it's Breakfast with Friends all across the battleground state. Will Kane takes us to North Carolina where polls open in just 10 minutes.
Pete gets the pulse of people in Wisconsin. Our election day coverage continues.
Everybody's pouring coffee.
Humiliated. He got angry. And he's like, yeah, all right, you say I can be president? I've been thinking about running for about 15 years.
Right.
Finally, I'm gonna run.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's so true, and he was talking to Elon Musk when he was doing it too.
Right.
Just before Election Day, former President Trump led a major endorsement from podcast giant Joe Rogan.
And as it all boils down to key swing states, J.D. Vance and Tim Walz, both campaigning in Wisconsin, where more than 1.5 million votes were cast early, and that's a new record.
So what are voters saying this morning? Pete Hegseth is talking to them. They're live at the Coop. It's in Waukesha, Wisconsin. Hey, Pete.
Yep, a lot of early voters and a lot of enthusiasm here in Waukesha at the Coop. It's great to be with these folks. The voters are going to speak today. They're speaking to us this morning. Brad, you're going to go straight from here and go to the polls. What issue has motivated you the most in this election cycle?
Well, we have 3 teenage sons, and we're firm believers in peace through strength. So that's top issue for us.
Preventing wars that your sons don't have to be a part of.
Yes, sir.
And 6th grader, is this your son? He's one of them? Absolutely. Nice hat. You can't vote, unfortunately. Give it some time. Sir, what's your name?
My name is David.
And you already voted early, right?
I voted early, absolutely.
And you're drinking early.
Don't tell anybody else that.
It's Wisconsin.
If work is watching it, this is regular orange juice.
Absolutely it is. I can vouch for that. What issue matters the most to you in this cycle?
For me, it's inflation and having a leader who is strong in the world, for sure.
Ma'am, how about you? You're talking to voters, issues as you went to the ballot box. What's most significant for you?
I think it's just adherence to our Constitution. We've deviated from that a lot, and we need to have somebody who's going to enforce it.
Okay. I was talking to this gentleman right here. You're actually working the poll today. What's your job at the polls today?
I'm checking in voters today at the polls. I ask for their ID, and they say their name and address. I just verify it is who they say they are, and then I give them a ticket and they get their ballots. I'm looking forward to that.
Voter ID. What a novel concept. Maybe every state should do that.
Yep.
Hey, thank you for working the polls. Appreciate
Yep.
it. And then we're going to talk to
California got voter ID.
Ma'am, you're a door knocker, right?
am,
How
and
many
I
doors have you knocked on in this election?
over 1,000 on my bicycle. Yep. And I gotta say,
That lady done knocked on over 1,000 doors on her
they open
bicycle.
doors to me because a grandma on her
Well,
bike
Donald
is
Trump.
not very intimidating.
Yeah.
And what's the issue you hear about the most at the doors?
Oh, probably the economy and immigration.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and I'm doing this all for my grandchildren, Gavin and Scarlett.
What's your name?
Becky.
If Becky can go door to door
Miss
on
Becky.
her bike, you can get out and vote today.
Yes.
That's pretty easy.
Becky can do it.
That's the message from
You can do
Waukesha,
it.
Wisconsin. Will Kane, I'm going to send it out. We're going to send it out to Will Kane in North Carolina, where his people are not even nearly as enthusiastic as they are here. Will, take it away.
Thank you, Pete. You know, I was texting with Pete and Rachel last night about what's going to happen in this election. The more I read, the more confused I get about some of these battleground states like North Carolina, where I am right now at the sweet spot. I was talking to Kirk, though. When you start reading about it, it's about demographics, about which way the women will vote, which way minority vote will go. And you were telling me a little bit about your experience, Kirk.
Yeah, a couple of weeks ago, or a week and a half ago, Trump was here for a rally at the convention center here in Concord. And while we were waiting in line, we fell about 100 people short because the convention was at capacity. And it was still hundreds of people, thousands of people outside of there. But what I saw there that heartened me was a number of people of color and women voters who were sitting in line waiting to vote for Trump, enthusiastically so, speaking with a number of different people.
And you were pointing out to me a little bit earlier, Kirk, that if President Obama is out there encouraging black men to vote for Kamala Harris, it actually shows there's a problem with black voters for Kamala Harris. We were talking about the gender divide. Jamie, you said here in North Carolina, you do experience that this state is split 50-50, but not necessarily on gender lines.
No, I don't think it's gender lines. I just think that there are so many people out there that are, thinking about their kids, thinking about their friends, their family, and what our future is going to look like. And I think it's more so the future and the financial part of it, and this country going to war over a split between gender. I think about my friends and family. It's definitely more the other pieces than it is the gender.
Well, polls open here just at 6:30 here in North Carolina. If I ask everybody in this diner which way they're going to vote, I know. Let's just do it anyway. If you're going to vote for President Trump, raise your hand. But I asked him, this is what I found interesting. I asked him, but everyone's saying the state is split 50-50. So if I asked you to make a prediction on which way this will go, if you think President Trump will win North Carolina, raise your hand. There you go. So that's overwhelming. Then, and I'm not going to throw George under the bus here, but I'm kind of going to throw George under the bus. If you think Kamala Harris is going to win the election, raise your hand. Here's George. Okay. Now, that's not the way George is voting, but tell me, you said something interesting about why you feel like Kamala might have some momentum in North Carolina.
I've been to the polls 2 or 3 times with my children who are first-time voters, and they voted the correct way. And every time I was there, I was outnumbered, 20, 30 to 1 every time. And some cases, it was worse than that.
Well, that tells us two things. People talked about the gubernatorial race here in North Carolina. It's not going well for the Republican. Could that affect Donald Trump? But the other point is polls just opened. So what he saw in the past isn't what you have to see today in North Carolina. So polls are open in North Carolina. Go vote, and we'll be with you when we come back on Fox and Friends.
Of course, we're watching the swing states to see if we have weather that could impact the voting across the Mississippi Valley, the Ohio Valley, Tennessee River Valley, and if you live across the Northwest, especially in the mountains, that's where we're going to get some snow. No severe threat. That's the good thing, because we've had multiple days of severe weather, but heavy rain in the forecast for Wisconsin. You are a swing state, so watch for that rain in the forecast, maybe some thunderstorms and some snow in the northern part of the state. And Michigan, this is the other swing state I'm a little concerned with. We could see a chilly rainfall across this region of the country for the next 24 hours. Otherwise, not a bad forecast for the rest of the swing states. Look at Pennsylvania, looking excellent with temperatures in the 70s. We could see some shower activity in the western part of North Carolina, including our friends in Asheville. All right, we'll continue to keep you up to date on all the weather. foxweather.com for your election forecast details. All right, I'm going to send it over to Steve Ducey.
Good thinking. Thanks, JJ.
You got it, buddy.
All right, meanwhile, let's talk about this. A major ruling out of a battleground state last night. Georgia's Supreme Court decided that only ballots received, mail-in ballots, by 7 o'clock tonight will be counted after delay in mailing absentee ballots in one of the largest counties in the state. Fox News contributor and GW University law professor Jonathan Turley joins us right now on Election Day. So they mailed a bunch of them out late.
That's right.
And now the judges say, you know what, too bad, you don't get extra time.
As harsh as that may seem, I wrote a column about a week ago saying for those of us who've done this before, just cut us a little slack. Just 2 rules. Don't change the rules at the last minute.
Right.
And err on the side of transparency. That's what got us into trouble in 2020.
Right.
Is that it fueled the distrust of people. So here in this court, but also in Pennsylvania, the court said, let's not have changes at the last minute. And that'll help us a great deal. And so I think this was a good idea to hold the line.
Absolutely. I mean, if you got a legal question, get it out of the way before people start voting.
Bro, दिवाली के क्या plans हैं? Bro, same as last year.
Nothing.
ये कैसी दिवाली, ना वो रौनकें, ना रंगोली, ना अपनों की बोली.
Who's he?
Yeah, that's Happy Uncle.
Vantage. All about the White House.
Hello and welcome to this special edition of Vantage. We are coming to you live from the White House. Behind me you can see the presidential mansion. This is what it's all about, the biggest prize in American politics. Come January and it will have a new president. Will it be Kamala Harris or Donald Trump? That's what we are here to find out. Now this part of the White House is called the North Lawn. It has a very special place in presidential traditions. When a state guest arrives at the White House, this is where the ceremonial welcome happens. It's usually packed on those days, but even now there's a buzz around here, a feeling of tension and
She
fervor.
is not at the White
We
House.
expect
That
to
is a
increase
green
in the
screen.
next hour or two because President Biden is heading back here. He is in his hometown right now. He's not at the White House, but in the next hour or two, he's expected to be back. Like all Americans, he will be glued to the television tomorrow because Tuesday is the big election day, the day of voting. Technically, we can have a winner by tomorrow night, but a lot of Americans voted early this time. They sent in mail-in ballots and postal votes. So it could take a bit longer.
Why are y'all trying to
But don't
project
worry,
like y'all
we'll be
in
right
front of
here
the
throughout
White House
week
blonde?
covering the results. So make sure you tune in every
way
day.
from
We've
India.
got a
You know
packed
they
show
not
lined
gonna
up
let
for
you-
Tonight, we're looking at how Washington is preparing for election day, what sort of security measures are in place, and we also attended a women's march yesterday. We'll tell you what women voters are looking for this time and who is leading the merchandise race. From Trump hats to Harris badges, it's all being sold in Washington and across the country indeed. And what does it say about the ground sentiment? All this and more lined up for you. First, the headlines. China continues its saber rattling. Taiwan detects 44 aircraft, 6 Navy vessels and 1 ship from Beijing around it. Many of these jets reportedly crossed the median line of Taiwan Strait. This incident comes amid escalating regional tensions as Beijing ups its ante over the self-ruled island.
So you
Turkey attacks
believe
3 mayors
that
in the
she's
Kurdish
standing in front of the
majority
White
southeast
House
on alleged terrorism charges. This is despite Ankara's efforts to
and she being able to read the whole news? That lady sitting at a desk with a green screen behind her.
Around 20% of Turkey's overall population.
Boy, they
Chaos
tell
in the
our
newly
business.
elected Jammu and Kashmir Assembly on its first day after a People's Democratic Party leader moved a resolution against the scrapping of Article 370. This led to BJP lawmakers protesting against the move. In 2019, Jammu and Kashmir lost its special status and was bifurcated into 2 union territories. The European Union welcomes the re-election of Moldova's pro-European president. She won in a tense vote on Sunday. The election was overshadowed by allegations of Russian meddling. It took place just 2 weeks after a referendum in which Moldovans voted by a razor-thin margin to back joining the EU. And a volcano erupts in eastern Indonesia, killing at least 10 people and spewing fireballs and ash on surrounding villages. Some wooden homes even caught fire. Several people have been evacuated. Indonesia experiences frequent volcanic eruptions due to its position on the Pacific Ring of Fire. It's the final stretch here in the United States, less than 48 hours left until polls close, until a new president is elected. Americans will be lining up to vote at polling booths tomorrow, but a lot of them have already voted. More than 77 million of them. How? Through early voting. Here in America, you can request a ballot on mail. You can then fill it up, select your candidate, and then drop it off in ballot boxes or even mail them via postal services. More than 77 million Americans have done it so far. That's around 48% of the total turnout in the last election. They've already voted. So clearly, early voting is the future. In 2020, the Democrats dominated this field, but this time, Republicans have caught up, mainly because Donald Trump has changed his position on this. Last time he opposed early voting, this time he's supporting it. Around 38% of early voting has been done by the Democrats, and Republicans are at 36.2%. So the gap is pretty narrow. Now we come to the opinion polls. Who is leading and by how much?
Well, Harris has a narrow edge over Trump in the national polls, but like we've said, that doesn't really matter. It comes down to the Electoral College, to the swing states, the 7 swing states. Let's look at the situation there. Harris is leading in Nevada by 3 points. She's leading in North Carolina by 2 points, in Wisconsin by 2 points, and in Georgia by 1 point. In Pennsylvania and Michigan, things are even, and in Arizona, Trump leads by 4 points. Now, these numbers make a couple of things quite clear. One, Harris has found some momentum, some new momentum. Apparently, last-minute undecided voters are picking her. And two, Donald Trump is also consolidating. Harris may hold the edge among early voters, but on Tuesday, it's all about in-person voting, and that remains Donald Trump's core. Which brings us to the campaigns. Both Harris and Trump are hitting the swing states. Harris spent a lot of time in Michigan. Meanwhile, Trump spoke in North Carolina and Georgia. As I said, this is the final stretch. Most voters must have already made up their minds. So it's all about the finishing touches now. Kamala Harris focused on the Muslim vote. Michigan is home to around 200,000 Arab Americans. They put Joe Biden over the line in 2020. They helped him win. But this time, it's not a guarantee. Arab Americans are angry about Biden's support to Israel in the Gaza war. And Harris may have to pay the price for it. She tried to do some damage control on Sunday. She promised to end the Gaza war if elected.
I want to say this year has been difficult, given the scale of death and destruction in Gaza, and given the civilian casualties and displacement in Lebanon. It is devastating. And as president, I will do everything in my power to end the war in Gaza, to bring home the hostages, end the suffering in Gaza, ensure Israel is secure, and ensure the Palestinian people can realize their right to dignity, freedom, security, and self-determination.
Beyond that, she stuck to the script. She accused Donald Trump of dividing America, promised to fight hate politics, and to resolve the cost of living crisis. Strange, because she's already vice president. And that's been a struggle for Harris, really. She's a member of the current administration, but the current administration is deeply unpopular. Biden's approval ratings are at 39%, so Harris finds herself in a spot of bother. She can't criticize her own government, but she can also not embrace it. So Kamala Harris has opted for middle ground. She's not calling for new leadership, she's calling for a new generation of leadership.
It is time for a new generation of leadership in America. And I am ready to offer that leadership as the next president of the United States of America.
On the other side, Trump did what Trump does. He held a number of rallies on Sunday. Most of them had the same theme: America is a broken country, only he can fix it. It's a strategy that worked for him in 2016. It's finding even more takers this time around, it seems, because of the cost of living crisis. Trump's campaign is mostly centered around two issues: tariffs and immigration. We saw that again on Sunday.
The United States is now an occupied country. Can you imagine having to say, we're an occupied country? But it will soon be an occupied country no longer. On November 5th, 2024, it will be Liberation Day in America. On day one, I will launch the largest deportation program of criminals in American history. I will rescue every city and town that has been invaded and conquered, and we will put the vicious and bloodthirsty criminals in jail or kick them the hell out of our country.
Some extreme rhetoric there, but clearly America likes it.
Yep.
Donald Trump also trained his guns on pollsters and journalists, quite literally. You see, Trump was surrounded by bulletproof glass at the rally, but those glasses had gaps. Trump said he wasn't worried though, because to get to him, an assassin would have to shoot through the press corps, and Trump says he doesn't mind that.
I have a piece of glass over here, and I don't have a piece of glass there, and I have this piece of glass here, but all we have really over here is the fake news, right? And to get me, somebody would have to shoot through the fake news, and I don't mind that so much, 'cause
I don't mind.
Trump also took issue with a new poll. It says Kamala Harris is leading him in the state of Iowa. The poll has surprised a lot of people because Iowa voted for Trump in 2016 and again in 2020. The last Democrat to flip it was Barack Obama. If Harris does that, it would be a big setback to Donald Trump. Of course, his campaign has rejected this poll. They say it's an attempt to demoralize voters. And frankly, there's a lot of that going on this time around, especially on social media. Hundreds of posts are spreading fake news about the election. Most of them are Trump supporters, but some are Democrats too. And why are they doing this? To destroy the credibility of the election process. Around 70% Americans think that Donald Trump will not concede if he loses, that he will
Truck, think Victorville Chevrolet, your Silverado Superstore. With over 100 Silverado trucks in stock, Victorville Chevrolet has your truck. Need an oil change? Get it done in under 35 minutes on your GM vehicle, or it's free. Want to be treated right? Victorville Chevrolet is family-owned, community-focused, and was crowned Chevrolet Dealer of the Year. Yes, the Chevrolet Dealer of the Year is Victorville Chevrolet. Come take a test drive today at Victorville Chevrolet, your Silverado Superstore. VVChevy.com. Chevrolet. Together, let's try.
the results like he did the last time. His supporters are laying the groundwork for that. Let me show you some examples. This video is from Pennsylvania. An influencer filmed a man dropping off a large number of ballots. He said the whole thing was suspicious. But guess what? The man was a postmaster. His job is to drop off ballots. A lot of accounts also posted pictures with this caption: I live in Canada, but I drove down to vote. The idea is to say that even Canadians are voting for Harris. Again, it's a false claim. That first video was debunked by poll officials, but not before it got 6 million views. Plus, it is unnecessary work for the election officials. They must conduct fair elections. At the same time, they must also bust fake news. Why can't social media platforms pitch in? Because they are part of the problem, especially Elon Musk and X. He's the most followed person on this platform, and he is pushing fake news. Elon Musk says Democrats are making illegal migrants vote. He also said if Trump is not elected, this will be the last US election. Again, fake news and dangerous rhetoric. Of course, if Trump wins, none of this will matter. But if he doesn't, expect nervous days for America.
For real?
One reason for that nervousness is what happened in January 2021. The Capitol riots, the day when America's Parliament building was overrun. You can feel that nervousness here. We've been going around Washington, D.C. over the last few days. Things are certainly different. For starters, we've seen a lot more fences. Even the sidewalks near the White House have been cordoned off. We saw a lot more security presence too. The people we spoke to are also worried. They have businesses here. Their children go to school here. So the possibility of violence is very scary. Take a look at how Washington is preparing, or rather bracing, for Election Day. Welcome to Washington, D.C. Just a couple of days until this town gets a new chief. Or rather, a commander-in-chief. Elections usually bring excitement and energy, a feeling of change and hope. But around here, the mood is a bit different. Yes, people are concerned about the results, but they're more concerned about what happens after. This is the Capitol Hill. You may remember what happened here the last time. Hundreds of Trump supporters breached security and stormed this building. They were refusing to accept that Donald Trump had lost the election. So senators and members of Congress had to be rushed to safe rooms and bunkers. Now we have another election involving Donald Trump, and everyone has the same question on their mind. If he loses, will there be another attack? Authorities are working to ensure that doesn't happen. For starters, security has been increased. Most of the popular protest sites have been fenced. Nearly 2,100 officers have been deployed. That's 300 more than January 2021. The hope is any fallout will be contained. Near the White House, similar arrangements are in place. The Lafayette Park is partially closed. So are the sidewalks near the White House. Officials are not taking any chances. They want constitutional centers to be safe in case things go south. Washington's governor is also on the job. He has activated some of the National Guards. Think of them as paramilitary forces. Each US state has National Guards stationed inside, sort of like backup for the army. In Washington, these troops have been put on standby. All that security may sound good on paper, but it only adds to the worries for the residents of the city. They got a taste of the violence in 2017 when Donald Trump was inaugurated as president. Hundreds of people took over Washington to the chants of "Not my president." Then they got the shock of their lives in 2021 when the Capitol riots happened. And now the people of Washington say that they're scared and nervous. A lot of businesses have boarded up their storefronts, fearing riots or violent protests. These are the people at the forefront of America's political divide. If the election is close, things may turn worse. Chances are candidates will approach the Supreme Court, another institution based in Washington. A legal battle is likely to bring a flood of supporters from both sides. A scenario that doesn't read well. Any violence will affect the locals in many ways. Their businesses are on the firing line. Roads may get closed, schools and offices could be shut, and police presence could turn the city into a fortress.
It's a sad state for the democracy in the United States. Why should freedom have to protect your own property when you disagree with somebody? Doesn't make any sense.
We all knows what happened when things doesn't go Trump's way. He incites his followers to protest in violent ways, and I think it's smart. I actually work a couple of blocks down in a government building, and I don't want to come to work on Tuesday. I think it's going to be hectic and crazy. I wish we would be.
What are you working on today?
I don't want to come to work on
You got what you need. This twin pack will out the road for you.
It's good.
This October, Valley High Honda has Halloween deals that are frightfully good. Check out Valley High Honda selection with payments that'll lift your spirits. Lease a new Honda Civic for only $179 a month. Or lease a new Honda HR-V for only $181 a month. Or lease a new Honda Prologue for only $199 a month. And Valley High Honda has a terrific selection of pre-owned vehicles too. But hurry, before all these offers vanish into thin air. So have a happy Hondaween and get the deal on the hill at Valley High Honda.
For officials, this is a tough choice. You can't stop supporters from holding peaceful protests. But how do you ensure the situation does not descend into chaos? This is the National Mall. This is the long shot of Washington, D.C. that you see in most Hollywood films. And these are the grounds where some of this country's historic protests and campaigns have unfolded. This place is open to peaceful demonstrations, but you need permission first. So far, at least 9 groups have applied, most of them left-leaning. And this is where the authorities face a dilemma. Do you give permission to opposing groups and risk a face-off? And if you deny permission to all, are you trampling on their right to protest? There are no easy choices as election day nears. Even afterwards, the danger isn't over. In the last election, the anger did not spill over immediately. It exploded weeks later on January 6th. So next week is merely the first in a series of challenges. The eyes of the world will be on Washington, D.C. The international press is here watching. The question is, what will we see? A peaceful transition of power or another crack in the foundation of US democracy? The race is a close one. Political ads are flooding the airwaves, and one such ad has stirred controversy. It shows a polling booth. A woman enters to vote. She looks at her husband nervously, then locks eyes with another woman. Both of them vote. They don't exchange any words, and finally they join their husbands. The ad doesn't really say very much, but the message is quite simple and clear. These two women cast secret votes. What's that? It's when you hide who you voted for. So the implication is that these women did not tell their husbands they voted secretly for Kamala Harris. And this did not go down well with the Trump campaign. They have slammed this advertisement. But the thing is, secret voting is not new. It's been happening for quite some time. And it's said to be quite widespread in this election. Look at this YouGov poll. 1 in 8 women say that they vote differently from their husbands, and they do it secretly. They don't tell their husbands about it. Nearly 5% women say that they refrain from voting to avoid a conflict with their husband. Which brings us to the historic gender divide in this year's election. It is shaping up to be a battle of the sexes. Donald Trump is popular among men. 53% say that they will vote for him. Kamala Harris is leading among the women voters. Nearly 54% women want her as president. So the gender gap is quite staggering. In fact, it's the largest since 1980. But what led to this wide gap? A lot of issues, perhaps none as big as abortion. For a lot of women, it is defining this election. And while some are resorting to secret voting, others are quite vocal about it. We saw this over the weekend at a women's march in Washington, D.C. Here's our report. Abortion rights. They've always been a point of contention in US politics. But this year, they're at the forefront. This is the first US presidential election since the Supreme Court overturned Roe versus Wade. Women in America lost their national right to abortion. They lost the right over their own bodies. And now they're out on the streets to fight for it. For millions of voters, reproductive rights could determine the next president of the United States. And they're making themselves seen and heard. This is Washington, D.C., the national capital and the center of all the political action. This is where hundreds of women have gathered for a march to rally for abortion rights. We are in the American capital where hundreds of feminists and reproductive rights activists have gathered just days before the election. This event is strategically timed along with the nationwide Get Out the Vote efforts. It's a powerful reminder of what's at stake in this election. To understand why abortion rights are such a pivotal issue today, we need to go back in history. In 1973, the US Supreme Court gave a landmark ruling in a case called Roe versus Wade. It granted American women the constitutional right to abortion. But nearly 50 years later, in 2022, the Supreme Court overturned that precedent. So abortion was no longer a national right in the US. The power to regulate women's choices was back in the hands of individual states. Now, each state can decide whether women can abort unwanted pregnancies, at what stage, and under what conditions. Basically, access to abortion now depends on where you are in America. For example, here in Washington, D.C., abortion is allowed in all stages of pregnancy. But in Texas, it is illegal unless you're dying. So far, 17 American states have outlawed abortion. Some have very narrow exceptions. Like only in cases of rape, incest, or if a person's life is in danger. 8 other states allow limited access to the procedure. This is despite the fact that nearly 66% Americans support complete legal access to abortion.
Since 2016, we've been telling folks that this is the most consequential election of your lifetime, and each year it's been true, whether it's 2018, 2020, 2022, and more than ever in 2024, we are voting on freedom or fascism, and there's really no middle ground.
We got to stand up for democracy. We have to stand up for a woman's right to have control over her body, control over her life. Women's rights are human rights, and we were back in the hallway
Which brings us to the presidential race. Kamala Harris versus Donald Trump. Support for abortion rights will benefit the Democrats. Harris has been quite vocal about the issue. She has vowed to protect women's rights if elected. But she was part of the administration which was in power when Roe versus Wade was overturned. Her predecessor, Joe Biden himself, has not been as vocal about the issue because of his Catholic background. So critics question if Harris will be different. Meanwhile, Donald Trump appointed the 3 Supreme Court justices who played a crucial role in overturning Roe versus Wade. He also supports the idea of US states governing abortion. Although in the last few months, he seems to have softened his stance. He called himself the father of IVF, that's in vitro fertilization. He also said that he would not push for a national abortion ban as president.
How y'all doing?
Activists prepared to march past the White House today. Their message is clear. They're watching. They want action from the next administration, from those in power.
Say that she's a big liar.
This is more than just a march listing. This is a demand for accountability and a call for the next government to prioritize reproductive rights. With the presidential race deadlocked, abortion rights could be the deciding factor in crucial swing states. These are the 7 states.
All right, man. Y'all see what it is. Get out and vote. Make something happen today. I do not want to hear y'all excuses. That's what I'm finna go do. I'm finna go vote. Finna go take a shower. Then I'm gonna come back to work and it's going down. How y'all doing? Y'all pushing that like button? Y'all showing me some love? I'm showing y'all some. Woo. These people going crazy in America. But they say if Trump don't win, all chaos gonna break off. What y'all think about that? Y'all think that's gonna happen? Alrighty, everybody. I love y'all. Go on and do y'all thing. Sure is.